ding. Hey, everybody. We are jumping on live. Let me share my screen so you can see our other fabulous coaches that are in here. Does that show it? Let's see. Yay. I believe we're all here.
Yay!
Welcome. The only, I think, drawback of doing this is that I don't know that I can see the comments on YouTube. So I'm going to do my best to toggle back and forth between the screen I'm on now and the YouTube screen in case we do have folks that are there and commenting. But welcome, everybody, to the Coach's Corner. This is a place where we're going to be coming regularly to make ourselves available to answer questions, to offer support, and to just talk about what healing from grief looks like. What are the steps? What are the actions? What are the things that you need to do to walk in healing? And what does it even look like to be healed? So we wanted to start this week with just talking about that a little bit, what healing looks like for each of us. And so for those of you that may not be familiar, I think a lot of people, if you've been watching this station, you're familiar with me and my story, but I want to introduce you to the other two coaches for Grace for Living After Loss and let them share really quickly their kind of loss story, how far out they are from the loss. And then we'll talk a little bit about what healing looks for each of us individually. So Monica, you're above me. If you would share with folks, who is it that you lost, the circumstances around it, and how long it's been?
Lost my son February 12th of 22. Lost him from fentanyl poisoning. It's been at the beginning. It was a rocky road, very rocky road, until I found Grief Relief and went through the program. And I think one of the things that I stress to people at this point in time, I made a choice to start to heal, to start to come to an understanding in my head and grapple with all the feelings and the emotions and try to get them in order. That was, it was a very conscious choice that I made to move forward in my life, remembering my son and honoring him while I was doing it. The thing with me, and I have figured out, is the whole time, if you know anything about drug addiction, it's not something that just happens. It's addiction. I lived with it with my son for years. And one of the things that I always brought up was, Joe, I want you to get healed. I want you to go into rehab. I want you to do this. And I would ask him to, and I knew it was going to be hard and it was going to be a tough road, but he needed to do it. When I lost my son, after I kind of got my shit together and decided I needed to heal, I had to eat my words and walk the walk that I wanted Joe to walk. It was going to be tough and it was going to be hard, but it was possible to do. Let me get the tools together to do this and move forward, to have a life that I could be proud of, that he now could be proud to look down and go, hey, my mom did it. And that's where I'm at. It's not a constant thing to work on now, but it was a conscious thing at the beginning.
Love that. I mean, I don't love that for you, but I love what you're walking in now. And I think I love that we have such different stories and different timelines, because it's great for people to see that you're coming up on the 3-year mark, right? And that you're walking in healing at this almost 3-year mark. So if you're watching this, if you're catching this live on a replay, I haven't seen people hop in yet, but so if you're catching the live and you're under the 3-year mark, know that you can get there, right? Even within the 3-year mark, it's entirely, time is a piece of it, but what you do with the time is what's going to either prolong it or shorten it. So yay, so glad that you're here. Monica, Lindy, I'm coming over to you. Share with the folks who it is that you lost and when, and the circumstances, whatever you feel like sharing.
Okay, so I lost my late husband, but it's been about 6 years, a little over 6 years actually, and to suicide. And so that's kind of, and Kelly knows this too from her own experience, that's kind of a loss that has its own, things about it, just like other things do. And he actually had kind of combination of issues. He had chronic pain for many years. And then he also had an addiction history and had been clean for many years, but had to go back on opiates for the medication. So he was always struggling with that piece of trying not to get back into that pattern of using too much. And he struggled with depression. And so it was a whole conglomeration of things. Um, and I kind of feel the same way as Monica. I just really made the choice. I mean, I'm, as quote unquote a widow. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like I'm a widow now. Like, but I never, kind of like that's this whole persona that sometimes people take on or is put on them that I didn't want. And I thought, no, I'm just gonna, I need to still be myself within this context of being somebody who lost a spouse. And so I pretty early on in that made that decision as well, that I'm going to make the choice to seek out healing and, in my own time frame. And I actually didn't find Kelly until, just last year. So I had already kind of did a good piece of that journey already, but I've learned a lot of things since then. And this program has actually helped me, like in training for it and in using it myself. I've actually, come a long way in the last year, believe it or not. I kind of thought like, oh yeah, I'm there. I'm good. I got remarried, and I'm doing well with a lot of other things. And, but I know, like I said, in this last year, I've benefited a lot just from, from this program and being in this space and so forth. So, and that's the thing. I just really feel like there's, I know for me, as far as specific to people who've lost a partner or a spouse, there's always a lot of pushback. Like both men and women get it. Like if you are wanting to heal and kind of move forward, people have all different kinds of ideas about what you should and should not be doing. And I got a lot of flack from people. I know other people do too. So that's another piece of it that I feel kind of passionate about, that I want to help people who are going through that as well, who really are trying to heal and rebuild their lives and are getting resistance from other people in their lives because they want to do that.
Yeah. So, I was thinking about, as you were talking, your type of loss is the only one that has its own title, right? Like, how crazy is it? It must be so easy for you guys to get caught up in the identity of the loss, because literally, like, when you go to fill out a form, are you single? Are you married? Are you divorced? Are you widowed? Like, it becomes a version of identity. And so I never thought about that until, as you were talking, that occurred to me, like, wow, that's a whole different layer of everything, right? So glad you're here. And I love the diversity of our points of view, right? So for those of you, if in case you're tuning into this and you don't know my story, I lost my mom to suicide and then my son to a fentanyl overdose a year later. So we have, and I know both of you have lost parents as well, right? So we have parent loss, spouse loss, child loss, from addiction, suicide, different issues, whatever. There's unfortunately quite a diversity of the loss experience here. But I love, both of you said it is a choice, right? Like it's a choice, number one, and it's shifting from the identity of it, becoming who you are versus something you went through. I think that's such an important perspective shift, that this isn't the totality of who you are. This is something that you went through, and that certainly like changes you and changes your outlook and changes the way you view things, but it shouldn't become the wholeness of who you are. So I do want to just talk about that a little bit. Like, what does healing look like to each of you? Like, if you had to say, like, to me, being healed from grief means blank. Monica, what does that mean to you?
Healing to me, peace, happiness again. And I know a lot of people, when you say you've lost a child, it's devastating. I've walked that walk. It's devastating, but healing is, there's a peace inside of me. One, I do believe in God. I believe he's in heaven. My son's not hurting anymore. There's no addiction. There's no pain that he had. There's not the inner emotional or mental turmoil that I know as a mom that I watched for years go on. And there's a certain amount of, and it took time. I'm not going to say, in the first, 6 months, I was just like, I wasn't. I by no stretch. But also, I want to make note that from the healing, from the peace that I have inside, I still have moments that
Mhm.
will throw me for a loop. Somebody will say something, a song will come on. And if I'm in that right frame of mind, I'm going to think of Joe. Oh, yes, I am. I'm his mom. I'm going to think
Mhm.
of him and I'm going to go back. But what I choose to think about is not the addiction, not the manner in which my son passed away. I'm going to remember the little boy that comes running up to me to explain to me how an engine works in a car.
Mhm.
Or, the 16-year-old that looked at me and said, I went to band practice and I can't go because I forgot my band uniform. Where was your head, son? Those are the things I choose to remember and what bring back the happiness. I'm not going to dwell on my son died. And there's a peace. Grief and healing from that brings a certain amount of peace and happiness.
Yeah, that's so solid. And
Mhm.
again, for those of us that
Mhm.
are paying attention, there's a theme here, there's a pattern. You have to choose to heal, and then choosing to heal means choosing to where you focus, choosing the thoughts that you focus on, right? And you can choose to focus on the painful memories or the pain of the loss, or you can train your brain to choose to focus on the positive memories and the good things. So that's a solid answer. Lindy, how about for you? What does healing mean to you?
I think for me, it feels like a balance, and part of that is that peace that Monica was talking about. That balance of like that I can have joy again in my life, and that feeling of peace. But again, there's also that doesn't mean that I don't still have those days and those moments and those times. I had somebody ask me about a year or so ago about it. We were having a conversation about it. It was one of my group students actually, and she said, "Do you still feel like you mourn your late husband?" Because most people think I have moved on, as they say, and I have moved forward in my life, and I am happy with where I'm at and with my marriage and so forth. But that doesn't mean that I don't still have those times when I think about
Mhm.
him or I miss certain things. So that I think for me that a big piece of it is having that healing for me means that peace, and but also the balance between that I can have joy and peace and happiness in my life, like Monica was saying. But though I am aware of the fact that there are going to be those times, and there doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me because I feel that way. It doesn't mean it's pulling me back to, oh gosh, that doesn't mean that I'm not healed now because I'm having these moments or these times when this bothers me. So, yeah,
Linda,
I mean,
you're human. Oh my goodness. How can
hmm?
you be? You're human. You feel.
Oh, I
When
know,
you're-
I know. Well,
Oh God.
well, and I know, and the other thing too is that like my late husband, he was like one of the same thing as you. I try to um concentrate on the happier memories because he struggled a lot. And on the outside, he was somebody who was very, like my dad, actually, very outgoing, friendly. People saw him as easygoing. He was not easygoing. He struggled with a lot of things, but most people didn't know that. I mean, we knew each other from when we were kids. And so I knew him very well and knew all these things. And even the last few weeks, I mean, it would have been easy for me to focus on the last few weeks of his life when things were really in turmoil with us, where he was really, really struggling before he made that decision and took his life. And I could dwell on that and think about that all the time. And I chose not to.
Mhm.
So there were many, many wonderful things about him and our relationship and things that he accomplished in the world. And those are the things I'm going to remember and think about.
Yeah,
And I
so
do.
good.
So,
Well, for me, my 2 cents on healing, I think that healing for me means a couple of things. Number one, that I'm able to be fully present in my present, that grief isn't stealing from me and taking away my attention, that I'm able to be fully present. Number two, that I'm looking forward to my future, that I'm actually excited about my future. I'm not enduring or surviving or just
mhm,
getting through the days, that I'm like connected to my present and looking forward to my future. And number three, that I have the tools that I need, that if and when grief shows up, I know how to manage it, right? Like it's not in control of me. I'm more in control of it. And sometimes being in control of it means you recognize that you just need to have a moment and have a good cry. That doesn't mean you're not healed. That doesn't mean whatever. What it means is that you've learned what you need when you need it, and that it doesn't hijack you. You know what I mean? Like, so having learned and practiced the skills and the tools so that if grief shows up, you can have your moment, deal with it, whatever that might look like, and keep living, keep moving on with your day, right? Like, we never become, nor should we just be like immune, you know, like nobody's talking about erasing the existence of grief in your life. What we're talking about is learning how to live in a way that this thing that happened to you, when it shows up, you have the ability to deal with it. But that, for the most part, whatever percentage of the time, you're enjoying your life, you're active in your life. And then I think too, a big piece is finding ways to incorporate your loved one in your life, whether you're honoring them, remembering them, celebrating them, creating a legacy, whatever that looks like for you. That's where, for me, the most healing, like literally every time we would not be together right now having this conversation had we not lost our people. All of our people are being honored, remembered, and celebrated right now because we're trying to help other people. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it, is they never take the time to intentionally think about, what can I do to carry my loved one forward? What can I do to honor and celebrate them? And so they feel like they've left them behind, or they feel guilty about being present in their life because they haven't included them in their present life. You know what I mean? Like, Quentin is such a present part of my day-to-day life that, like, I don't feel like I've moved on without him, because he's very much here. He's very much present, like, in this conversation, right? So to me, that's what healing looks like. Go ahead, Monica.
Also, I think, you know, you're on everybody I think is on Facebook. So you see all these feeds and you see all these things and the little memes and everything. And the one thing that bothers me when it comes to people talking about grief, because they go, I'm never going to be the same. Everything has changed. Yeah, you're right. You're in agreement with something. I am not the same mom that I was. My life, my world as a mother changed on the 12th of February of 22. So when I woke up on the 13th, I was a whole different person. I was still a mom, but the dynamics changed. And that, grappling with that, and then coming to terms with that. And it doesn't say you just embrace it and you're happy about it and everything. Come to terms with it. I think that's the biggie. And again, like we all said a moment ago, the biggest thing, it's a choice. You choose to either move forward, or you just stay stuck. And that is the biggie. Like you said, Kelly, and Lindy has said, you make a choice that I'm not the same person anymore. I've changed, and take it from a negative.
Right.
Why people need to turn it around. Yes, I've changed. And yes, I'm never going to be that same person I was. But I have memories now, and they can be good, positive memories. I have 2 other children. I have grandchildren now that they need me, and I can give all that to them plus some. And that's how I have to look at it. Let me rephrase. I don't have to. It's how I chose to look at it.
Right.
And I talk to Joe every single morning when I have to let my dog out. Every single morning, I say good morning to Joseph as I let the dog out, and I say good morning to God. And I have a conversation with God. I hope that he can help me through my day. You know, my big thing is, put a hand on my shoulder and the other hand over my mouth so I don't say the wrong thing. And,
does that work? Wait, does he do that? Is that a thing?
I'll try that if it works.
I didn't know that was an option.
God, you didn't keep it there long enough. It slipped out. I'm going to get to heaven, and he's going to go, Monica, we're going to let you in, but, we're going to talk about that mouse first. And Joe's going to go, that's my mom. That is my mom. But that's how, I know you talk about Quentin, and everything. And we talk about the good times. And, you know, I mean, our sons passed away under very similar circumstances. And we've gotten in a debate on the circumstances even, but bottom line, they're both gone. And it's, again, people, it's a choice. That's, I think, is the strongest thing to do. It's, I don't care who you
I think
are.
that's the hardest pill for people to swallow, right? Like, because nobody consciously would choose that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody would
Right.
pick to be sad and consumed. And I know all three of us know it is out of your control initially. Like, it
Mhm.
consumes you, it overwhelms you. You're not being like, hey, I don't, I'm actively choosing to not want to get out of bed or whatever. Like, it's just over you like a wet, heavy blanket, right? So we're not saying it's your choice in the sense that you did it to yourself or that you're, wanting that, but you do have to choose to come out of agreement with it and choose to believe that you can learn to come above it, right? And that's the part it's hard for people to hear, because I think it's like saying by saying it's a choice, it's like they're choosing to have it be that way, which we know that they're not, but they have to
And
choose.
it's like Lindy said, you still love that person. And I think that's the other thing that a lot of people believe. If I'm happy, if I go on that vacation, if I don't put the empty chair at the table at Thanksgiving, that means I don't love them anymore. I've forgotten about them. If somebody's to look at me and tell me that you don't love Joe anymore, look out, because I'm going to probably hit you. I adore my son, but he's not here anymore in flesh. He's here in memory. He's here in spirit. He's got this thing about lights to me, but that's a whole nother time. We can talk about that. I adore him. I love my son. I honor my son by not falling to pieces. And I came out of this hole that I fell into on the 12th of February when I walk in my house and find my son dead on my couch. I can talk about it. And
Yeah.
I still get that feeling sometimes because I'm a mom, but I love him.
Yeah.
Healing means you still love.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the aha I just had last week, and I think, all of us in our groups, I would love for people to put their focus on healing, whatever that looks like for them. Like, hey, if you're watching this, you get to define what healing looks like, but let's make that the focus, right? Instead of the pain, instead of the brokenness. If healing for you means you can get out of bed in the morning, then make that your definition of healing and make that your goal, right? And then when you get to the place where you can get out of bed in the morning, maybe your new definition of healing is you're going to make it through a week without crying or a day without crying, whatever that looks like, right? But let's make the benchmark, let's make the thing we're aiming towards healing, greater and greater measures and levels of healing, and keep moving that bar, right? Like, to me, again, for me, the ultimate healing, when you get to in my opinion, kind of the culmination of healing, is how am I designing my life to remember, reflect, honor, and celebrate their life and weave it into my life in a way that's congruent and feels good and healthy and whole. Like, to me, that's like the best place of healing that you can get, right? But if you're over here just trying to get out of bed, let's start there and let's make, hey, healing to me looks like getting out of bed. Healing to me looks like being able to be in a social setting and not losing it, right? Like, healing to me means being able to get my hair cut and not blurting out my son's dead, which I have been there, right? Like, I get it. But my point is, can we make our conversation centered around the idea of healing instead of so hyper-focused on the pain and all the different ways that it hurts and all the different ways, right? Which, again, I know, like, that's what you're bleeding, like that's what you're experiencing is the pain and the stark contrast of this person was here and such a huge part of my life, and now everywhere I look for them, they're not there, right? Like, that's very real. We don't want to minimize it, but again, learning how to choose where to focus, and the words that come out of our mouth are literally paving the path for our future. So the question is, what kind of future do you want to build for yourself? And let that be the meditation of your heart and the words that come out of your mouth. Hey, Larry. Oh, Larry. So Larry is tuning in, and he was in our Grief Relief Nation membership for the longest time. And Larry is and was a star pupil that, and Larry knows he lost his wife, his beautiful wife of so many years. I forgot how many years, Larry, you can chime in to say a lot of years. They had a beautiful family, the love of his life, right? And he lost his wife and was a widow. Is it a widower then? Is the guy a widower and the woman?
Technically, the man's a widower. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was a widower and just searched high and low for tools and help for grief recovery and jumped into our monthly membership and just literally set his mind to learn every single thing that we had to offer and applied it, showed up every week for our group calls and was active. And I think he was in there for like 4 or 5 months and he's like, you know what, I'm good. Like he got to that pinnacle of healing where he could talk about his wife and he was around his kids and it was no longer so painful for him. And so glad that you're jumping on, Larry. It's such a, just one of our many kind of case studies or people who jumped into this work and did the work. And that is the thing I just want to say, and we're getting close to the half an hour mark, but the other point to know is that it is work. It doesn't happen by osmosis, right? Like it doesn't just, you can't just sit there and expect for it to happen. It's going to take your work and some intentionality, just like we're not just going to lose weight by just, magically saying, I'm going to lose weight. No, we're going to have to put the right things in our body. We're going to have to exercise our body and do all those things. Larry says, the new me is a happy me. Oh, Larry, you're going to make me cry. That makes me so happy to hear. And this is the hope and goal. Like the point of the hope and goal of us coming on here is that we want people to see and experience what healing looks like and to see examples of it and to be able to ask questions, because I went several months after my mom committed suicide before I saw an example in real life of somebody who was healed. And that was the thing that broke hopelessness off of me and made it even possible for me to say, hey, maybe I can do this, right? And so that's what we hope to be here, is to be an example of what healing looks like, talk about it and answer questions. Because if you've stumbled across our path, that means that healing is available for you. It's an assignment and an appointment with healing, and we want you to be able to grab hold of it as well if you came along. There's a few people on anyways. Hey, welcome guys. This is our very first ever live Coaches Corner. We hope to be doing this. Well, we don't hope. We will be doing this on a regular basis. We're still trying to figure out the best day of week and time of day, but we plan to make this, I believe, a weekly, if not every other week kind of situation where we will just hop in. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to talk about our individual grief experiences and stories, but more importantly, the tools and the resources that we used to find freedom and healing so that you can grab hold of it for you too. So if you have a question or comment, feel free to drop it in the chat. We're happy to answer anything. Lindy, any other thoughts from you, what we were talking about as it relates to healing and leaning for it?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about just when you were talking, Kelly, was how it's easy, I think, for people to look at others like ourselves and anybody who maybe has gone through our program, like Larry and other people who, do feel like they're healed and do feel like they've gotten to that place where their life now is a happy life, and say, oh, well, yeah, but you're just stronger than me. Or I can't do, I mean, I had so many people say to me, I don't know how you got through all that, or I don't know how you do that. I'm just not that strong. I'm like, I'm not that strong either, that's not what it's about. Like, I mean, and I work in end of life care. I mean, I'm a hospice nurse, and plus I do the grief coaching, and so people say, oh, well, you're more used to being around death, or you're more used to that. I'm like, well, I guess, but that doesn't make a difference when it's personal. I've had many colleagues who have had their family members under our hospice care, and when that's going on, when it's your own person, pardon me, it's a whole different thing, and we treat it differently. We treat them like they're like a regular family who's coming in with a person. They're not one of our colleagues or somebody who does this for a living. So I think that's another fallacy that comes up too, that people have, like, when they see somebody who's healed or who's moved forward and has gotten to that place, they're just like, oh, well, they must have skills I don't have. And that goes back to what you were talking about, Kelly, about having the tools. Like, we don't have any magic like, it's not like we're magical. We just have, we've learned the tools that are there that we can go back to again and again when we do have those times when we struggle, and we do have those difficult moments and those difficult memories and those challenges.
Yeah.
It's not like you're, that different than anybody else.
100%. And I think people overestimate what they can do in a short period of time, but they underestimate what they can do in a longer period of time, right? One thing that I always find fascinating is that I believe every 8 months we're entirely new, cellularly speaking. Like on a cellular level, your whole body regenerates every 8 months. You're constantly creating.
The fat cells be gone then too?
And the what? The
Fat cells.
Oh, depending on what you do, yeah. But so the point is, if you do something consistently, you are a whole new person every 8 months. So if everybody's like hanging on to, I'm the old me is gone. The old you's been gone over and over and over again. You're constantly changing. You're constantly being renewed. So the question is, are you going to grab hold of that and lean into it? We have a question here, so I'm excited. Jeffrey says, what does letting your loved one go look like? Well, Jeffrey, I'm going to say, like, I have not let my loved ones go. Like, I don't let them go. They're still very much with me, right? I think where people get hung up is they try to stay hanging on to the past, which that is the wrong math, right? Like, we try to hang on to what life was like when our loved ones were here physically, and we're trying to cling to how it was when they were here instead of letting that go and understanding and appreciating our present situation, and then learning how to be connected to our loved ones, remember our loved ones, incorporate and infuse our loved ones in our day-to-day life now. To me, so even the way we phrase that, like, I haven't let them go. I just don't expect life to look like what it looked like before, when they were here physically. I understand, and I have learned how to weave them into my life now. Is that helpful, Jeffrey? Or if you had a follow-up question, but I hope that helps you in some kind of capacity. And also, Jeffrey, if you're comfortable, share who you lost and how long ago. That might give us some insight for the conversation as well. Monica, what was your point?
Also, I haven't, along with what you said, I haven't let Joseph go. What I think what you don't want to hold on to is the grief part. Let go of that. Let go of that. What you feel like is that hurt. I mean, that first moments, those first days, those first weeks, those first months of that just feeling of you're alone, you're empty, you're hurting and everything else, that does not define. Hold on to the love that you had. Hold on to the love that you felt for that person and let that shine through, and not the grief part. That grief part is not love. That is just a repercussion of what's happened, and they're not here anymore. You hold on to the love. Because you don't let go. You never. I will never let go of Joseph. Never, ever.
That's such a good point, because I think people make that mistaken distinction. They think that the pain of grief is the love that they feel for their person. No. That's the pain of grief. And grief is a symptom of not having completed the mourning process, right? So we mourn, and that should resolve the grief. Certainly the intense, debilitating grief. When we appropriately process the loss and teach our brain how to think about the loss, and we renew and retrain our brain, that debilitating grief should be resolved and settled. But so many people, they actually become attached to the grief because they confuse that pain of grief for the love that they have for their loved one. So such an important distinction. Such a good point, Monica.
Yes, very much so.
Well, yay. Well, we're a little over 30 minutes here. I'm going to say our initial one. Oh, no, wait. No, Jeffrey came back. So we're going to at least answer this one. So Jeffrey says he lost his wife 5 months ago to cancer, and he's having difficulty separating grief and the memory of her and the new reality without her. And so, Jeffrey, first of all, I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. Second of all, I know this doesn't help, but you were right on pace. Like, that sounds appropriate for where you're at in the grief recovery. learning how to sift those things out and separate them and how to deal with them separately, right? Like, what is the grief? How do we hold the memory of her? And how do we learn to embrace or at least navigate the new reality without her? Those are things that it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice to learn how to do those separately. And I know Lindy can probably speak into this a little bit more, but this is the work that we help people to do, because it isn't natural or easy, or, it takes time and intentionality. Any thoughts about that, Lindy?
Well, I just wanted to say to Jeffrey as well. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you are even seeking this out, the fact that you came on this today to watch us, and you're obviously seeking out, like grief, like the support and information about like, how do I do this and how do I heal and so forth. You have to recognize that for yourself too, that's a very big step, that you already are, in some ways healing and moving forward, albeit slowly, because again, like Kelly said, it's you're early on and it's a different process for everybody. But yeah, the fact that you're even looking at these things and recognizing like, hey, wait a second, how even asking the question like, how do I do this? Like asking those kind of honest questions, like how do I let go, or how do I do this, and getting the feedback that you need, that it hopefully will be helpful for you to recognize that there's different ways to do it. Yeah, I think that's a big piece. The fact that you're even here, being present, asking the questions, and wanting the help and the information.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, I'm going to drop our calendar link below in the chat. So if you want to book a call, I'd be happy to tell you, of some additional resources. We have free and paid resources and different kind of paths that people can take to learn these skills and get the help to really maximize the efficiency of your grief recovery. That's how I want to phrase it, because we're all going to go through grief recovery, right? And like we said, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, Jeffrey, but time is one of the pieces of the equation. But then what we do with that time is either going to make it longer or shorter, right? So the things that I discovered and that we teach the folks that come into our community is, what can we do to collapse that time? What are the things that we can do, the little daily exercises and things to help shrink the time to make it the most effective and efficient grief recovery time possible? Because it's different for everyone, right? Like I always say, I'm never going to run a 4-minute mile, right? Like, God did not equip me to run a 4-minute mile, but I can run the best mile that I can run, right? Like, what is the fastest I can run, giving my build and my limitations? And can I learn from other people who can run faster than me? Can I pick up skills and tools from them so that I can run my race well, right? Like, so that's what we hope to do for people is like, it's not, can you heal as fast as any of us or anyone else for that matter? But the point is, what's the fastest race that you can run? What's the pace that you can run that's going to serve you well and help you get where you want to be? And that's what we're all about. But with that, I am going to wrap it up. But Jeffrey, I'm so glad that you were here today. Be sure to watch. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. Oh, yay. He is subscribed to the channel. He says thanks. He got the link and he appreciates the channel. So yes, do subscribe, because we will, whenever we do go live again, we'll figure out our time for doing this regularly. We will make this a regular thing, and we're just happy to be able to share with all of you guys. So with that, we will log off. We'll see y'all next time.